Welcome to G Fun Facts Online. Today, we are diving 4,000 meters beneath the surface of the Pacific Ocean to discuss a discovery made in 2024 that has fundamentally broken the rules of marine biology. It is a story about the darkest places on Earth, about rocks that act like batteries, and about a revelation that forces us to rewrite the history of life on this planet, and potentially others. This is the story of dark oxygen. To understand why this discovery is so shocking, we first have to establish the dogma that has ruled oceanography for over a century. Since we began exploring the deep sea, the abyss was understood as a place of consumption, not creation. It is a world of absolute, crushing darkness. We believed that the bottom of the sea was the final resting place for the sun's energy. The prevailing scientific view was that oxygen, the breath of life, was a gift solely from above. It was manufactured by phytoplankton and plants in the sunlit surface waters, and then transported into the depths by cold, dense currents known as the thermohaline circulation. Once that oxygen reached the seafloor, it was a finite resource. It was slowly consumed by the sparse life forms that dwell there: sea cucumbers, bacteria, and ghost octopuses. The seafloor was effectively a tomb, kept alive only by the charity of the sun. In every experiment ever conducted where scientists sealed off a patch of mud to measure gas exchange, the result was a downward slope. Oxygen levels always went down as life breathed it in. It never went up. That is, until Andrew Sweetman, a professor at the Scottish Association for Marine Science, looked at his data in 2013. Sweetman was leading an expedition in the Clarion-Clipperton Zone, a massive fracture in the Earth's crust between Hawaii and Mexico. He had deployed landers to measure the breathing rate of the seafloor. When the landers returned to the surface, the sensors showed something impossible. The oxygen levels inside the sealed chambers hadn't dropped. They had risen. Sweetman's immediate reaction was denial. He told his students to put the sensors back in the box because they must be broken. It was the only logical conclusion. Finding oxygen being produced in the dark is like finding a fire burning without fuel. It was scientifically offensive. For nearly a decade, Sweetman treated this data as a glitch. He sent the sensors back to the manufacturer for recalibration. He used different brands. He tried different methods. But every time he went back, in 2021, in 2022, the glitch returned. In the silence of the abyss, oxygen was surging. It wasn't until the team used a backup method, a non-electronic chemical analysis called the Winkler titration method, that the denial finally broke. This is old-school chemistry involving manual titration and color changes. It doesn't glitch. When the fluid samples from the black depths turned a specific shade of amber yellow, indicating high oxygen concentration, Sweetman realized he had been sitting on the discovery of a lifetime for 10 years. The abyss was breathing. But how? The answer lay in the rocks scattered across the seabed, like spilled potatoes. These are called polymetallic nodules. To the untrained eye, they are just ugly, charcoal gray lumps sitting in the mud. But geologically, they are time capsules. These nodules form over millions of years, growing by precipitating metals from seawater around a nucleus, like a shark's tooth or a shell fragment. They grow at a geological crawl, adding just a few millimeters every million years. A fist-sized nodule is older than the human species. Their composition is what makes them special. They are almost pure metal ore: manganese, nickel, cobalt, copper, and rare earth elements. Sweetman's team found that oxygen production only occurred where these nodules were present. Their hypothesis was audacious: seawater electrolysis. We learn about electrolysis in high school chemistry. If you put two electrodes in water and run a current through them, you can split the water molecule into hydrogen and oxygen. But this requires a battery. The team realized that the nodules themselves were electrically active. They are composed of layers of different metal oxides: manganese oxide, iron hydroxide, mixed with nickel and cobalt. Because these metals have different electrochemical potentials, electrons can flow between them. The nodule is, effectively, a geobattery. When the team brought these nodules up to the ship and applied a voltmeter to their wet surfaces, they were shocked. A single nodule could generate a voltage of up to 0.95 volts. To split seawater, you need a theoretical minimum of roughly 1.5 volts. While a single nodule isn't quite enough, nature rarely works in isolation. In the Clarion-Clipperton Zone, these nodules are packed densely, often touching one another. The researchers realized that when nodules cluster together, they can act in series, like batteries stacked in a flashlight. The combined voltage across a cluster of these ancient stones creates enough energy to strip electrons from water molecules, releasing free oxygen into the deep ocean. They called it dark oxygen. Now, the mechanism here is fascinating. A polymetallic nodule isn't a solid, uniform lump. If you cut one in half, it looks like a target with concentric rings. These rings represent different geological eras and different mineral compositions. Some layers are rich in vernadite, others in todorokite. In the presence of seawater, which acts as an electrolyte, Ions move between these layers. The surface of the nodule, specifically the manganese oxide, acts as a catalyst for the oxygen evolution reaction. It lowers the energy required to rip water molecules apart. It is a natural version of the industrial electrolyzers we use today to make green hydrogen fuel, except nature is doing it in the pitch black, under 400 atmospheres of pressure. The timing of this discovery could not be more dramatic, because the Clarion-Clipperton Zone is currently the battlefield for the next great industrial resource war. For decades, mining companies have eyed this region with hunger. The green energy transition, the shift to electric vehicles and wind turbines, requires massive batteries. Those batteries need nickel, cobalt, and manganese. Terrestrial sources of these metals are problematic, often associated with deforestation, conflict zones, and child labor. The CCZ, however, contains more cobalt and nickel than all known land reserves combined. It is a treasure chest sitting on the bottom of the world. A company called the Metals Company, or TMC, has been leading the charge to harvest these nodules. They argue that picking up rocks from the seafloor is the lesser of two evils compared to razing rainforests. But the dark oxygen discovery has dropped a bomb on their business model. If these nodules are not just rocks but active oxygen factories, then removing them is not just resource extraction, it is the destruction of a planetary lung. When the news broke, mining stocks shuddered. TMC released an aggressive rebuttal, accusing the study of being flawed and suggesting the oxygen readings were artifacts. But the implications are devastating for the industry. The International Seabed Authority is currently writing the Mining Code, the rulebook for extraction. If the dark oxygen theory holds, the environmental impact assessments are all wrong. Mining creates sediment plumes, clouds of silt. If this silt settles on nearby nodules, it could insulate the electrical connection between the rock and the seawater, effectively shutting off the geobattery. You wouldn't even need to harvest a specific area to kill it, you would just need to dust it. If the deep-sea ecosystem relies on this extra boost of oxygen to survive in the stagnant depths, turning off the batteries could lead to a mass asphyxiation event across millions of square kilometers. But the implications go beyond mining. This discovery forces us to rewrite the book of life. For nearly a century, the Great Oxidation Event has been the cornerstone of Earth's history. The story goes that roughly 2.4 billion years ago, cyanobacteria evolved photosynthesis, learning to hack sunlight to split water and release oxygen. We assumed oxygen required light, therefore we assumed complex, aerobic life must have evolved in shallow sunlit waters. But the nodules in the abyss are ancient. The chemical conditions that create them have existed for eons. If the Earth has a mechanism to produce oxygen in the dark through simple geology, then oxygen might have been available in the deep ocean millions or billions of years before the first cyanobacteria bloomed. This suggests that the primordial soup where life began might not have been an anaerobic stew. There could have been oases of aerobic potential clinging to metal-rich rocks in the deep. Life could have learned to breathe oxygen in the dark, long before it learned to eat the sun. And this extends beyond Earth. We are currently hunting for life on ocean worlds like Europa, a moon of Jupiter, and Enceladus, a moon of Saturn. These worlds have vast oceans hidden beneath kilometers of ice where sunlight never reaches. Astrobiologists have always worried that the lack of oxygen would be a bottleneck for complexity. You can get single-celled slime with chemical energy, but to build a fish or a squid, something that burns energy to move, you generally need oxygen. If geobatteries exist on Earth, they likely exist on Europa. If the rocky core of Enceladus is rich in metals, which we believe it is, then the dark oceans of the outer solar system might be oxygenated. The ceiling for life on those worlds has just been raised. We are no longer looking for mere slime, we are looking for things that breathe. So what actually lives in the dark oxygen zone? The CCZ is not a desert. It is one of the most biodiverse places on Earth. There are xenophyophores, giant single-celled organisms the size of basketballs. There are ghost octopuses that lay their eggs specifically on the stalks of sponges that grow on these nodules. These creatures live in a world of extreme energy scarcity. If there is a localized source of oxygen, a halo around each nodule, it stands to reason that life would adapt to utilize it. The nodules might function like campfires in a frozen wilderness, with microbial communities huddling close to the source. If we mine the CCZ, we are removing the anchor points of this web. The battery is removed, and the lights go out. We stand at a crossroads. One path leads to the industrialization of the deep. Giant crawlers will descend into the dark, vacuuming up the nodules to be processed into batteries for our Teslas and iPhones. The price will be the silence of the abyss and the extinguishing of the geobatteries. The other path leads to preservation and science. We declare the abyss a wilderness. We study the geobatteries to understand how to design better catalysts for our own energy needs, perhaps mimicking the manganese reaction to produce green hydrogen more efficiently on land. The discovery of dark oxygen is a humbling reminder of our ignorance. We have mapped the surface of Mars better than our own ocean floor. We assumed the abyss was dead, and it turned out to be electric. We assumed it was a sink, and it turned out to be a source. As we gaze down into the black water, we must realize that we are looking into a machine, a vast, silent, electric machine that has been humming since the dawn of time. The question is no longer just, what is down there? The question is, do we have the right to unplug it?